Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street. I can't wait to share this episode with you. Hello, and thank you for joining me today on the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I am talking about running a garment fitting. Fittings are by far my favorite part of being in the apparel industry. Even as a really young assistant technical designer back in 2007, learning how to run a fitting was I was craving it so bad. I would sit in these fittings with my managers and with my team, learning how to take proper notes, learning how to kind of follow the process of what a fitting should be. And I was just so antsy and anxious to be up there, be the one pinning the garments, be the one cutting the garments and giving my advice on what the garments were going to need to fit better on the body. And I've definitely worked really hard over my career to be one of the best that I possibly can be at running fittings. And I'm really proud to say that I have a really strong reputation across the industry, especially across the outdoor industry, as being someone that people want to work with when it comes to fittings, because it's just kind of in my bones. It's something that I love to do, and that translates really easily to the work. I think it just really shows how passionate I am for running fittings, that people want to come to my fittings and be part of them. And they tend to run really smoothly as well, because everyone knows that they're in good hands when I'm up there kind of doing my thing. So when I go to give other people advice about running fittings, I feel really good about being able to tell them, what I've kind of done throughout my career and how I've been able to basically curate that kind of a feeling for everybody in the room. A fitting is definitely a time for all departments that need to be involved in that garment's creation to come together, evaluate how it's looking in real life, in motion, if you're an athletic brand, and figure out how to make small improvements along the way so that you're all really proud of what you're sending out to the customers at the end of the day. So at unmarkedstreet.com, which is the sister site to the Business of Apparel, I have a free fit protocol and checklist that is a free download for any of you who are interested in checking it out. I wanted to start today just kind of walking through what a fit protocol is and what my suggested protocol is, which is in the free download if you want to check it out verbally or written down as a PDF. But number one, everyone who works with me knows this about me, and whether they hate me for it or they love me for it or anything in between, punctuality is just huge to me. So if we are going to start a fitting at 1 p.m., I really do want everyone to be there at 1 p.m., if not earlier. Fittings take a really long time. Really getting through all of the details, giving everyone the chance to have their opinion, have their voice be heard, have their notes and their comments captured appropriately, takes quite a bit of time. And unless you're expecting to sit in a fit session for an entire day, which very few of us have the time to do when we also have so many other tasks within our roles, we really need to make sure that we're being efficient, that we're on time, and that we're starting on time. So number one with my protocol is please be on time. There have been instances at different companies where we've had to put some other rules in place, and sometimes they can sound a little bit harsh. For example, at one place we had a rule where nobody was allowed to bring food or drink to the fittings. And this ended up resulting from an issue where people were bringing their lunches into the fittings. They weren't really paying attention to what was going on. We had a couple people who were bringing stinky food into the fit room, and it was kind of an unpleasant situation for lots of people. And so just to kind of be fair and not have to call anybody out and not have to create an awkward situation, we did put that rule in place. I mean, obviously water bottles is something different. Like if you're bringing your water bottle or your drink from lunch in, we weren't going to like kick anybody out for that, but we were trying to make sure that everybody was focused while we were in the room. And we were trying to make sure that everybody was going to be comfortable being in the room together too. There are also a couple of other protocol things that, again, sound a little bit harsh when you read them or when you hear them out loud, but they do help to run the most efficient fitting. And this next one kind of basically goes around the idea that everyone has a voice and will have their time to speak. But unless it is your time and we're nominating you to kind of be at the front of the room and be the nominated speaker, we do encourage you to sit and listen and absorb what everyone else's opinions are. You will get your turn, we promise. Along the lines of that, we do ask that everyone remain focused, no extraneous conversations in the room. Like, obviously, we know that a huge group of people in a room, designers, merchandisers, product leaders, developers, technical designers, all of those people are going to want to ask, hey, how are you doing today? Or those kinds of things. And that's, obviously that's totally fine. But when we're talking about the fitting, we do want everyone paying attention so that we don't have to repeat ourselves as we go. Again, this is just a time saver. A typical first proto fitting will last anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. So if you're developing an entire line of, let's say, 30 new garments, and you're only going to be able to get through 2 of those in an hour, and you only have an hour every day with a fit model, it's going to take you over 2 weeks to get through all of those garments, which is, in my opinion, it's too long. So working on your efficiency in a fitting and really getting everybody to focus and make sure that there's not a ton of repetition and everybody's working toward the same goal, getting through fittings as fast as possible while still being accurate is the goal. So that's kind of the main section of the protocol. And then the document that I share on unmarkedstreet.com kind of goes into the different roles that everybody has. So I wrote this with a team of people at one of my previous companies. We put together this protocol. It was really important for us to be able to start getting through more fittings quickly because we were going way too slow and we were missing deadlines. And this company was 100% process driven. If we missed deadlines, things got dropped. We didn't extend deadlines. It's just not how it worked there. So in order for us to be able to keep all of the products alive that we wanted, we had to figure out efficiency. And so this is where this was written. And at that place, those of us who were technical designers were kind of meshed together. We were technical designer developers. It was kind of one role. So within the document, it will say your lead developer is in charge of doing certain things. Know that that's also kind of the technical design role that's kind of being dictated there. The developer will call out any measurements that were incorrect on the garment. They should have already gone through the garment and totally evaluated the construction to see if it was correct. And so the beginning of the fitting should start by calling out any of the issues that have already been found so that we're not overly addressing them during the fitting. For example, if a garment measured 1 inch too short, we asked for it to be 1 inch longer and the factory just didn't hit it quite right. We call that out at the beginning so that we don't continue to have this spinning conversation around the garment being the wrong length. It's just wasting everybody's time. So we can quickly call that out and then know that we'll address it as we kind of go through our checklist, which is the part I'll get to next. From there, we definitely want to invite our design team to come in and give their opinion on style lines, details, did what they sketched into the tech pack, did that get translated into the garment properly? This is where we allow them to draw on the garment, either with chalk or if you're really brave, I actually like to use Sharpie marker. This is where they can kind of come in and give their opinion, talk completely from top to bottom about the garment, what they like, what they don't like, what they're happy with, what they're not happy with. From there, we want to ask our product line manager or our merchandiser to come in and give their opinion, not just of what the designer has gone through most previously, but also of what they were expecting of the garment. This is the section of the fitting where we're going to talk a little bit about costing. Your product line manager or merchandiser hopefully has a cost quote from the factory at this point on the prototype. So the factories made this entire garment and they're saying, this garment cost us $10 to make. So this is going to be your price or whatever the number is. And the merchandiser can then come to that portion of the fitting and say, we really needed this to be at $8. So totally acknowledging what the developer and the designer have already said, how do we figure out how to get $2 out of this garment? And so then that becomes a really big conversation if the costing is a little bit off. We also need our product line manager or merchandiser to confirm that their brief has been followed. So they're the ones at the beginning of the entire process who will write up a design brief for the design team. The design team then goes in and draws and sketches and creates this tech pack of sketches that follows what the product line manager was requesting. And the product line manager puts together that brief to ensure that the product we make speaks correctly to the customer. They're kind of in charge of that. They're in charge of making sure the line is cohesive and that anything that our customer could still need or want in their closet is being fulfilled with those new briefs for the line. So this is the part where they're going to come in and say, is this what I expected? Will the customer like this? Does it match my brief? Does anything not match my brief? How do we address those things? From there, we're going to definitely go into fitting and pinning the garment, cutting the garment. In the cycling world, we always had to fit standing up straight and on the bike because we wanted to make sure the garments not only fit when you're trying them on in the fitting room at a store or at a shop, but also, most importantly, when you're riding your bike, it needs to fit and feel good. So we kind of had to go into two different modes there. If you're an athletic brand, it's really wise to ask your fit model to kind of either pretend or at least use some of the same body movements that they would use in the sport that you're intending them to use that garment in, so that you can make sure it moves and functions with the body appropriately. All of that kind of goes into the fitting section of it. You want to have with you either chalk or, like I said, a Sharpie marker. If you're using black garments, silver Sharpies work really well. You want to have safety pins with you. Please never use straight pins during a fitting. They poke everybody and it's just not comfortable. They fall out really easily. Safety pins are the way to go. You definitely want to have a measuring tape with you so that as you're pinning things out or as you're trying to move seams from one location to another, you can advise how far all of those details are being changed. Sometimes we'll bring binder clips to a fitting. Sometimes a pin just isn't going to get through the thickness of a fabric. And so a binder clip will help you at least gauge how far you need to take out of the garment. Then you can measure it and kind of write it down. Binder clips don't always stay on the garments really well, but that is kind of a solution that you can use if you can't get a pin through the fabric. Bring all of your notes with you. Make sure you have pens and pencils for everybody. Once you've gotten through the fit portion and the garment with all of its pins in it and all of its markings on it now looks much closer to what you want it to feel and look like on the body, that's when you'll go through a full fit recap. So as the lead developer, as the lead technical designer in the room, you want to go from top to bottom, everything that everybody discussed about that garment during the time that you were fitting it. What were all of the notes? I guarantee you there will be at least one note that someone needs to go back and revisit because of all the extra steps you've taken throughout the fitting. So the design team might have said one thing at the beginning of the fitting, and now they want to go back and either change that note slightly or maybe even scrap it completely because we took care of it in a different way. Or maybe they were able to change their mind because we discussed something else throughout the fitting. It almost always happens. So the recap of the notes, in my opinion, is actually the most important part. So that's kind of how you run through a fitting. All of those protocol notes are going to be in my download that you can get. From there, the rest of the download goes into my fit checklists. So whether you're fitting a top, a bottom, which is what we basically lump pants, skirts, shorts into, we just call them bottoms, or dresses, whether you're fitting any of those three categories, My advice is to go just from top to bottom of the garment. It makes it as easy as possible. So for example, if you're fitting a shirt, you want to start at the neckline, looking at either the hood or the collar. Then you want to look at the shoulders and the armholes. And from there, you're just going to work your way down the rest of the body. And then you're going to work your way down the rest of the sleeve. If you're fitting bottoms, you're going to start at the waist, looking at the waistband, looking at any pocket details, evaluating how your rise fits, and then looking at your thigh, knee, inseam length, leg opening, etc. For dresses, you're basically combining those two, but again, just starting at the top of the garment, working your way down to the bottom. The download that we've created has literal checkboxes, so you could print out these checklists if you wanted to, bring them to the fitting with you, and as you discuss each point on the garment, just go ahead and check it right off. I also recommend that if there's something really important to your brand, that you add it to your own personal checklist. When I was at a certain company, one big question that we had on everything was, is it soft? I'm not sure about you, but when I go shopping, like in a physical store, I shop with my hands first. I'm kind of touching all of the different fabrics. And if something feels really soft, I automatically kind of gravitate and want to take a second look at it. So this brand was really like leaning into the is it soft question. And so that question was also on every single checklist that we had. And we needed to make sure that at the end of the day, every single fabric, whether it was like a buttery soft fleece or even like a woven nylon, we wanted to make sure that if you thought about that fabric enough to think that it was soft, it was a winner. And if for any reason it was scratchy or we noticed any of the stitching was scratchy, we had to address it because we know that people shop tactily first. Running a smooth fitting is something that takes years to really learn. Starting with a protocol and a checklist that can get you into a groove and help you have like a steady flow every time that you're in the room is going to help build consistency, and that will over time help to build confidence. There's a whole other element of running fittings about having the garments kind of tell you what they want, if you will. Like, it's almost like being like the garment whisperer or something. Like the clothes kind of tell you what they want when they're on a body. A certain amount of wrinkles in one place will tell you, that it's too loose there, or a certain amount of drag lines will tell you that the pattern shapes and the garment isn't balanced properly. And understanding a lot of those nuances is going to take a while to understand, but it will come over time. And the more consistent that you are with your fit process, the more often that you will see similar issues again and again, most likely, and you'll start to learn how to fix them in the same good ways over and over again. I really recommend when you are in a fitting, if you can, to have a screenshot of your pattern, of your flat pattern. So this is not something that's in the protocol because it's not something that every single brand can do. So this is kind of bonus material here. If you can have a screenshot of your flat pattern and your pattern engineer in the room with you, pinning, cutting, and drawing on your garment is going to become so much more accurate. You're going to be able to see the shapes of the pattern and where they might already look a little bit incorrect or wonky. If you understand pattern shapes, or if your pattern engineer understands pattern shapes, which they totally do, they'll be able to tell you if, for example, a sleeve cap looks too short or too long or too wide. They'll be able to tell you if an armhole looks like it's just not going to go together very well. And that 9 times out of 10 totally translates onto the garment. So what you're seeing flat pattern wise translates onto the garment, and it really will help you understand what fixes you need to make. And then that again translates into the type of comments that you're going to write to your factory. If your factory is doing your pattern revisions for you, being able to describe the exact revision they need to do on the pattern file is always going to yield better results than if you just tell them what's wrong on the garment. So bringing those elements together will elevate your fitting beyond anything else, in my opinion. Knowing your pattern, understanding when you slash a garment or cut a garment, how that's going to translate to your paper pattern, what you're going to do to that paper pattern to make that actual revision. All of those things are really going to make it so much better at your next proto round. And that's ultimately the goal. Every single fitting is intending to get you to the next round. First protos very rarely ever come in looking fantastic. If you have a wonderful first proto, like total kudos to you. That is awesome. Like I totally commend you for that. But everyone should almost have the expectation that a first proto is going to be coming in quite far off from where you want it to be. And you need to be able to spend the time in the fitting with everybody to get it to a better spot with the intention of getting a better second proto and then a better third proto before you start moving into size sets. Making small incremental changes is really important as well. If you make too many changes at once during any fitting, sometimes it will totally distort the garment in a different way than you expected. And now you have a whole new set of problems. So that's going to be my last bit of advice today. If you're running a fitting and you're starting to make so many changes to a garment, think about the changes that are going to make the biggest impact for the next round and save the rest of your notes for next time. If you think that changing an armhole while changing a sleeve cap, while reducing the chest and the bicep and figuring out a new shoulder slope on your garment aren't going to all work together magically on this pattern, take a couple of those things out, do the things that are most important, and then readdress them on the second proto. You might find that the few things you do now actually fix the other things already. And if not, you're able to then address those additional notes separately and in and of themselves in a way that doesn't create another mess at the next proto round. If you're at a brand who is struggling to run fittings and you'd like some more advice or you'd like some more help, please reach out to me. Like I said, I love running fittings. It is my most favorite thing. We on Mark Street have really learned how not only to run some of the best fittings in person, but we're actually getting really good at running virtual fittings as well. The trust that we have on our team and the trust that we build with our clients really lends itself to being able to have one person in the room fitting with a fit model and the rest of us kind of observing and watching over the screen. It's a bit of a novel idea. It's something we didn't think could be done when we all started sheltering in place and working from home back in 2020, but it is now pretty regular practice for us. So if you need help, please let me know. I'd love to help you in any way that I can. And I look forward to hearing from you on it. And good luck with running your next fitting. I hope you have fun. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, unmarkstreet.com, where I do weekly trainings through my video channel, a monthly newsletter, and offer so many resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand.